Hi, today we're going to talk about Tunisian crochet, and I just want to take a second to show you about the different kinds of hooks. This first one is a 14-inch Afghan hook. It has a stop at the end so your loops don't slide off. So it looks like a knitting needle at this end, but it has a crochet hook at this end. And this comes in really handy if you want to make large flat pieces. Along those same lines are interchangeable hooks. It has a hook at this end, and then at this end it actually has a connector where you can attach a cable. And then I've got, different length cables on here. It's nicer because when you're doing heavier objects, you're still using with a regular sized crochet hook. But for the purposes of today, I'm going to stick with my favorite double-ended bamboo clover takumi. We're not going to use the double-ended part of it today, but I like it because it's lightweight and it's the same size as my regular hook. So you can use whatever hook you like depending on the project size. In this case, it's a sample. I'm just going to do it this way. So every Tunisian project starts with a foundation row, and that starts with a chain, and we're going to work our first row into the chain. Just like in regular crochet though, you don't work into this first chain, you start with the second chain. That first chain is really meant just to give you some wiggle room. And so I'm going to pull up a loop under the back bump, which is that straight line of each chain, all the way down. So in Tunisian, instead of working one stitch at a time, we're working one row at a time. And each row consists of two passes. A forward pass, which is what I'm doing now, which is pulling up loops, and a return pass, which is where you remove the loops from your hook. So here's my completed forward pass. I've got all my loops on there. And now we're going to start taking them off. So for a standard return pass, a lot of patterns will say standard return pass. The first thing you do is yarn over and pull through one and just make one chain at the very end. That allows for some wiggle room and keeps that edge from being super tight as you work up. The rest of the row is worked in the way normal crochet is, with two loops at a time. So yarn over, pull through two, yarn over two, yarn over two, and you work your way all the way across until you just have one loop left on your hook, and then you're ready for your next row. So here's my completed foundation row, and you can see that the characteristic of Tunisian is these vertical bars. This is what everybody's talking about when they say in front of the vertical bar, behind the vertical bar, and with Tunisian's knit stitch through that loop. So let me just show you a couple of those. So simple stitch is the one that's most common. Again, you skip this first one because that's the loop that's on your hook. You go for the second one. Simple stitch simply means you insert your hook along the front through that vertical bar, yarn over, and pull up a loop through in front of the fabric but under the vertical bar, and you pull up a loop all the way across. This is the one that looks a little bit like weaving, some people think, because you can see those bars in the fabric as they go along. So now that we're on a regular forward pass, this last stitch is going to be a little bit different. In theory, I could just go under this vertical bar, but it's going to be a little bit wonky. So if we look at that chain one we made, we can see that teardrop shape. That's the chain one we made on our initial return pass. We're going to insert the hook under that teardrop shape. Can you see that? And pull up a loop there. So it goes under both of those loops, and that keeps that edge really nice and neat. All right, so forward pass done. We're going to do a return pass. The first thing you do is to chain one, and then you remove in twos. Try to move a little bit farther out so you can see better. All the way across. And so this is Tunisian simple stitch. See? Don't worry about those spaces as we go along, those will get filled in. Okay? So if this is Tunisian simple stitch, what happens if you pull up a loop through the back of the vertical bar? It's hard for me to hold in a way that you can see on the camera. This is called a reverse Tunisian. Sorry about that, got an extra loop there. So you just look for where that loop is, insert your hook in the back, and see how it pushes that chain from the previous row forward. That's what fills that what looked like holes and empty space. As you work those loops, it pushes everything into place. So this is reverse stitch. You just insert the hook, same as you would for simple stitch, but in the back. And then again, we could do this, or you can still do the under 2. And see how it pushes that forward? That brings some really great texture through there, the reverse stitch. So we're going to do this as standard return pass, chain 1, and then remove in pairs. So some color work will have you use that reverse stitch as a way to change color. So it's kind of a cool stitch to know. The next most common that I find is the knit stitch, Tunisian knit stitch. It's the one that looks a lot like knitted fabric, and to get this one just right, you just have to be familiar with your loops. So this is that vertical bar. It's actually a loop that goes from the front to the back, and you just insert your hook from the front to the back through that loop, and then do your yarn over. So right through the center of each one. And this is going to open up those chains and make it look like a knit fabric. Again, just under those last 2 in the chain 1. Chain 1, standard return pass, removing loops in pairs. So can you see right here how that opened up? If we kept going, each loop would be pulled sideways and it would create those interlocking V's that we see with knit stitch. But I do want to show you a couple of other things. So if you're going to do, some patterns will call for double. That means the same as regular crochet. You start with a yarn over and then insert your hook, pull up, but you only remove the first pair because you have to keep one loop for your return pass, and that's how you make a Tunisian double. And then the only other one I want to show you right now is the purl stitch. So you know knit. Purl is just having the yarn in front of your fabric when you insert your hook. So you're going to do Tunisian simple stitch, but your working yarn is going to be in front. You yarn over and pull through, and see how it leaves that extra bump there? So if your yarn's in front, you insert your hook. Sorry, I'm having trouble. Yarn over, pull through, and you get that nice bump there, and you can get a ridge going all the way across. But no matter what stitches you use on the forward pass, your return pass is always going to be the same. Chain 1, remove the rest in pairs. Lastly, I want to show you how you finish Tunisian crochet to fill in that last row of spaces. And this would be, some designers will call this finishing and some will just call that binding off. So instead of picking up loops all the way across, we're going to work one stitch at a time. And you would do it the same way the pattern says. If it's simple stitch, then you just insert your hook as you would. But instead of pulling up a loop and holding it on your hook, you pull it up all the way through like a slip stitch. The next bar, like a slip stitch. The next bar, all the way across. Some patterns will want you to do different stitches, but they'll say so, like if they want you to use a single crochet or something else, because they're going to be doing something else afterwards. And that gives you a nice finished edge and tightens up all those spaces. So you can see with Tunisian crochet, you've got a lot of option for stitches and textures in your fabric. And if you add color work, even more so. I hope you enjoyed learning about it. I hope I made it simple enough for you. Give it a try, and then you'll be ready for when we do some of the more complicated Tunisian stitches later on. Happy crocheting!